For the past 10 years, I've seemed to constantly find myself arguing incessantly with people I know about where we're heading as a species in regards to privacy and how it's slowly but surely dissipating, and I always hear the same stupid argument time and time again, which is, I've got nothing to hide, so I've got nothing to fear. Me, I'm a fearless guy. I'm practically the Fonz when it comes to fearing nothing. And that argument always pisses me off because, one, I don't like, trust, or even believe any person who's ever said that. And it actually makes me more suspicious of them, similar to people who say they've never lied. It's like in Breaking Bad when Hank gets Walt to secretly put a GPS tracker on Gus Fring's car, and it reveals that he only drives to work and then back home again. And the DEA is like, yeah, let's dedicate 100% of our budget and energy into investigating this guy. There's no actual way that shit's possible. But two, I think it goes a lot deeper than that. And I feel like the argument's always been used as a straw man to make privacy-concerned individuals feel like they're freaking weirdos for being suspicious and even somewhat paranoid of the fact that in modern day, literally every single thing we do is monitored somehow, whether it's through microphones, cameras, applications, bank cards. Everything and anything that can be connected to the internet will be monitored. It's to the point where I don't even like telling friends of mine who aren't aware of this anymore, because it feels cruel to do it. And I'm tired of watching them all slowly start sweating and pretending not to be completely panicked after I tell them, and at this point, I'd rather them continue on being blissfully ignorant than to be as paranoid as I am. After all, after Edward Snowden's big 2011 reveal to the entire US about matters such as these, the whole world simultaneously realized at once, damn it, turns out the whole time I didn't realize that the last place I'd suspect a hidden camera is in an actual camera. But I was reading an article recently about something called the privacy paradox, which was a study that indicated that test subjects were kinda barely, in a wishy-washy kinda way, willing to sacrifice privacy for convenience, and cited that people expressing privacy concerns often fail to act in accordance with those concerns. Which basically means that we're all pretty much paranoid at this point, but really enjoy jacking off. So the whole world has decided that the ability to jack off conveniently means more to us than wondering which government institutions are accidentally sifting through thousands of hours of us watching adult content on this weird quest to find out that we're not even an actual terrorist. But in this video, I want to try to take a deeper look into some of these issues in an attempt to debunk the nothing to hide, nothing to fear narrative. Because like many issues, I feel like we're only focusing on the tip of the iceberg whilst ignoring other underlying concerns I've always personally wondered about. The complete loss of privacy, unfortunately, is one of the many symptoms of living in a world ran by big data. And yes, I'm well aware that big data is here to stay, because after all, big data is what's fueling the innovation of robots we're all desperately hoping won't kill us, so I wouldn't want to get in the way of that. This is the digital dystopia, something to fear with nothing to hide. Alright, so to start off this segment, I'm unfortunately gonna have to make a Game of Thrones reference. Anyone who's familiar knows that Season 8 was a train wreck, and hate to be reminded, but that doesn't take away from the fact that on this channel I pride myself on the ability to correlate a Game of Thrones analogy to just about anything. I've done it before, I'll do it again, so here we go. In Game of Thrones, there's a character called Bran. He starts off as a pretty normal dude, but by the end of the show, he's constantly connecting to this omniscient force called the Weirwood Net, where he basically can see, mystically, everything that has happened, everything that's happening now, and everything that will happen in the future. And I've always sorta kinda thought of him as a sorta prehistoric Google/artificial intelligence.
I'm going to go now.
Go where?
The two are actually quite comparable if you think about it. They both know everything we've done in the past: Google searches, YouTube video preferences, location data, emails, who we interact with. And if they both know the past, they certainly know the present. And if they both know the present, they certainly know the future. So even when you're not using Google, let's face it, you're using Google. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that regardless of what I wish to change personally with these videos, big data is here to stay. Because at this point, the vast benefits of the big data machine will surely override the consequences that I myself hope to at least inform people about. And to understand how we got here, we have to start at the beginning, and I'll attempt to make this part brief. In 1999, Google's very own Sergey Brin and Larry Page developed PageRank, which later came on to become Google's super efficient and super effective search algorithm. The reason it was such a widespread success was because the Google duo were the first to revolutionize the concept of digital neighborhoods, which would, in theory, make individual websites like brick-and-mortar stores, and Google would act as the town, effectively making Google's PageRank the middleman between the World Wide Web and the Google user. Fast forward to 2021, and it starts to make more sense how Google, and Amazon, and Facebook came to dominate the entire world, and thus, Google became an integral thing that we don't want to live with, but can't live without. These, unfortunately, are some of the nastier symptoms of late-stage capitalism, or as I like to call it, too late-stage capitalism. And I only say that because if you think about it, all these weirdos who are now super rich way beyond the point that's even necessary, all capitalized off of big data earlier than everyone else. Amazon openly bragged about not profiting for the first 20 years because he knew it would pay off eventually.
He essentially says, we are going to forego profits in order to take market share. That our strategy is to lose money, which enables us then to put other companies out of business who can't afford to lose money.
I know in the past I've been guilty of lumping all these tech giants together in the same group and assuming their intentions are evil based off of suspicion. And at this point, we all feel like we have to blindly trust that our data being used is for the good, but the actions taken in the past year and a half have been so bold and relentless, with the book burnings and the censorship, should be enough to at least somewhat demonstrate that the future ain't gonna be utopian. So enough dawdling on, let's get to the number one reason privacy should be taken more seriously, which is that they know everything about us and we know nothing about them. Before I go any further, defining they in this context usually tends to immediately portray you as some sort of tin hat conspiracy theorist, and I don't mean it in that way at all. When considering that years of our data has been collected, stored, sold, and analyzed, I mean it in the purest sense of people other than us have the ability to keep and analyze our data, and that should make people more uncomfortable, especially since it becomes more invasive each year and will continue to become more invasive each year. And the possibilities are endless as to who can hold such data. To list a few among many, what immediately comes to mind, for me at least, is the government, big tech corporations, the police, our employers, and last but not least, internet stalkers. And I want you to imagine for a second that one of the 5 entities I listed above know everything you've done online in the past, say, 15 years. Even if you have been Mr. or Mrs. All-American Joe Jerkoff Nothing to Hide guy, that doesn't even exist as far as I'm concerned, doesn't that thought make you shudder at least a little bit? Even just filtering all your data down to your GPS location being in the hands of the wrong people means you've already set a predictable trend of where you go on the regular, making your actions predictable, making you findable, which leaves you open for all kinds of abuse, especially if that data gets in the hands of an internet stalker. More on that later. To go off topic for a second with a quick personal anecdote, I remember back in like 2018 I was at the Port Authority bus terminal in New York City, and I looked real kinda scraggly and homeless, and I had quite a few hours to kill before my bus came, so I kinda just sat there with my huge hefty bag of clothes, and I ended up getting up to go buy a coffee, and before I could even register what was going on, like 10 Port Authority cops who were wielding these big-ass shotguns surrounded me. And the peculiar part of this incident was that I guess you can call him the chief, didn't even ask me for my name, or where I was going, or what I was doing. He simply just asked, "Where was the last place you worked?" And I told him, and he kinda nodded, and then they left me alone. And after they left, I thought to myself, that was pretty weird. It almost kinda felt like they already knew who I was, and just wanted to see if they could catch me in a lie. And to their credit, I mean, I did look pretty out of place. I was like unshaven and all that. But then I realized the job I had prior to that incident involved facial scanning in order to clock in. And I knew once my face was scanned for that petty-ass job that had my facial scan information, I knew it was pretty much public domain to be swapped and traded to the highest bidder. And funny thing is, everyone who's ever used Snapchat to put that stupid dog filter on their face now has their facial data being passed around. And coincidentally, in the year 2020, the company Clearview AI quietly sold all our facial scan information to police departments across the US, while the whole world was distracted with other BS news stories that were designed specifically as a distraction. So my point is that the days of remaining anonymous and being able to, in a sense, ride the rails or start over, or hope that your job can't judge you because of irrelevant crap you've done or said online are quickly fading, and that's not okay. And it's to my understanding that most people worldwide aren't really even aware of this, so it's not like they even know that they should be more careful as to what they do online can come back to bite them in the future. And the rules keep changing as to what's acceptable, which I'll get to soon, but let's move on to part 2, social credit. So when I first started this channel and was still wet behind the ears and barely even knew how to edit yet, the first video I made was me theorizing that a social credit system was inevitably coming to the West. And even back then, my feeble, naive self thought that I was really reaching because I used some pretty far-fetched examples to come to my conclusion. Like, for instance, how Uber ranks its drivers, and how we're already at least symbolically being secretly scored via our social media presence in the endless quest for clout as well as adoration. I'd say back then I thought there was about a 10% chance such a ranking system would ever exist in the West, and oh boy did that opinion sure change when during my research for this video, I found a website called mylife.com, and I was in sheer and utter disbelief to find that a website already exists that gives us a social ranking score that uses such personal data on us to arrive at whatever score it is we're given, that I'm in complete disbelief that this website is even freaking legal.
So as we just learned before the break, My Life has built its business on your personal information, selling those details to you or to somebody who wants to find you.
Now, a website like this is no surprise to me personally, but mylife.com goes the extra mile by becoming so intrusive into personal details that what used to be considered ethical flies completely out the window, and they do this by doxing people unknowingly. And the reputation score just becomes the cherry on top of the dystopian nightmare. And as I currently understand it, future employers do have the ability and legality to access your criminal record, but not much else. And if they're really dedicated to doing any sort of extra snooping, they can creep on your social media. But with a few tweaks of the mouse and adjustments to your privacy settings, you can prevent them from finding anything you don't want them to find. Now, of course, a site like this keeps some of your information hidden behind a paywall, but to name a few things it exposes about an unknowing participant are your social media posts, personal reviews by other people, photos available of us online, education and work history, your complete list of addresses, former addresses, and family members, your education and work history, sex offender status, your religion, your past bankruptcies, and of course, court records. Oh, and it even scrubs through your online dating history. I'm not even kidding, you can go check to see if you're on this website right now. funny thing is, a picture of me as a 14-year-old is attached to some other guy with the same name who isn't me. So if a future employer searches this site for me, they're gonna find my picture attached to some other guy who happens to have a below 44% average national score, which, to be honest, sounds about right. Part 3. The conclusion. So overall, out of all the information and digital age related topics I like discussing on this channel, privacy is easily the one I approach with the most defeatist there's nothing we can do sort of attitude. And that's primarily because it really does honestly feel kinda too late to even complain about it. I mean, sure, there are precautionary measures you can take, like using Tor or Wonix or DuckDuckGo, but at this point I'm almost convinced that there's enough of our data already out there to essentially make a digital copy of ourselves that, if converted to a chatbot, would mimic us almost too perfectly. At this point, this YouTube channel requires me to have read countless books revolved around futurism and technology, and one thing I've noticed is that just about every enthusiastic futurist relies heavily on having a the ends justify the means sort of philosophy. And the text always contains a lot of buzzwords like sustainability, convenience, and revolutionize, and they leave little room for ethical concerns, and surveillance to them is just looked at like it's another obstacle to sweep under the rug on the never-ending journey to our post-human future. So the next time some absolute div says, "I've got nothing to hide, so I've got nothing to..."
Ensuring medical care for immigrants is critical to Canada's...
Send them this video and pray a social credit system based off of years of secretly collected and non-consenting data doesn't inevitably materialize, because once that happens, I hate to break it to you, said system will be very, very difficult to reverse. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody, Digital Dystopia here. If you like this video, consider doing the like, comment, subscribe thing, but also I wanted to mention that I am now on all social media platforms under the handle Digital Dystopia, but the first I is a 1, unfortunately, because Digital Dystopia was already taken. Consider following me on those platforms, because I never know if my channel is going to get yanked, and I'm in the process of uploading on all alternative platforms, and having social media would help keep people updated and informed. I absolutely hate social media, but in this context, I really think it could help my channel. Thank you so much. Good night.